It's Friday, August 6th, and you, my friend, are listening to The Drive. Hey, Ollie. How you doing today, man?
Not bad, Chief. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Can't help but notice that you were not Catherine.
Thank you. I mean, or is that a good thing? I'm not sure. But probably not.
I'm not touching that one. You're trying to get me in trouble right out of the gate. That's not nice. For those of you wondering, we're in the dog days of summer, as Daniel and I like to say quite often. To nobody other than ourselves, because we're old men and those are old man expressions. And Catherine has gone a-traveling with the family. I think as she shared last episode that they were headed to Florida and then she's doing a little bit of working, a little bit of vacationing. And so she's there now. And apparently, as she learned this week, the hotel Wi-Fi is a little bit suspect. So, and when she and her husband are trying to do the same thing, apparently it wasn't working so well for them. So Catherine is unable to join us today. And we looked around and we said, who can we get that's really, really good? And as you can imagine, we couldn't find anybody. So then we went to Ollie. Ollie, we're really glad to have you here, my friend. This is all good. Are you in Olympic mode? I mean, this is like we're all like peak Olympics now, building up. I suppose we're getting near the end. I think we're getting near the end. I don't know. It's just been all Olympics all the time on in my house. How's Great Britain doing?
You know why I really enjoy spending time with you? Because I get my 5 a day, and by 5 a day I mean insults, not veg. But anyway, there we go. I'm at one. Can we get the other 4 in through the show?
Oh, we will get the other 4 in it. I mean, the problem is you make it so easy. I treat it like an Olympic event. I'm going for gold, so there you go.
And
so
you're
how's
not even
Great Britain
getting
doing?
to the final. Truth is, I don't know. So the time difference is a little weird. It's presented in the middle of the day, and I've not really been able to watch too much of it. But from what I've heard, we've had a couple of events where we've not done that well before, and we've done very well in this event. So truth be told, I have no idea, but I heard the lineup for the men's 100-meter final, and I'm like, who are these guys? It's not Bolt. It's not all of the other Jamaican guys that I've known for a long time. There's no the English guy. I believe his name was Dwayne Johnson, I think, and there was a few Americans. Heard of none of them, so it's the new school, and I don't know any of them yet.
Well, I can say that Canada represented in the 100-meter men's final, where we got bronze.
It's a lame field this year, isn't it?
We're
It's
very
really
excited about
the
that.
barrel.
Well, our guy was apparently the heir apparent to Usain Bolt, according to Bolt, and then on the 200-meter he got gold, and now we're in the 4x100-meter relay. Will be next up the big race, and what I can tell you is, the American team didn't make the finals. Apparently, passing that baton can be hard, and it's something you should practice, because if you don't, it affects your qualifying times. So to all my American friends, you have my sympathies. So there we go.
Speaking
yes,
of
true.
passing the baton, I mean, I think I've been here more than you have in the past few weeks. Are we passing the baton to me here?
If we're measuring pure presence, perhaps you have, but if we're measuring quality of contribution,
then you're out of the water.
I'm on the podium, baby. So there we go. That's all I got to say.
Oh, podium. I thought you were going to be out in the parking lot, but okay.
See. This is why you're better situated in the fans, up in the seats, watching how it's done. Sit back, relax, my boy. I've got you covered. Just watch me and learn. That's how it's going to happen today. Folks, are you tired of all this witty banter that's not doing nothing but killing your time? Let's get right into it. All right. First up, we always talk about the road ahead. What's happening coming up that you need to know about, whether it be this week or maybe the next couple of weeks. A heads up for you. Ollie, my friend, you've got a bit of a webinar coming up. You want to share with us what's going on there?
Yeah, so Mr. Prell and I will be sitting down, and you know what it's like sometimes when you listen to a webinar. It's here's some advice, here's some tactical stuff, do this, apply that, try this idea. And we've only got so much time in a day. There's only so many things that you can actually do and execute properly. And sometimes, I don't know about you, I've listened to a podcast and they've 10x something or whatever. They increase something by an amazing number, and you're like, oh wow, I got to do that. And it's just completely irrelevant. You've already done it. They should have been doing it. And it's just like, oh, okay. It means nothing. So we're doing the opposite. Not a fireside chat, but close to. We're looking at the inside of the deals that Mr. Prowl has signed off on, the things that we have bought, and why that deal works. So stuff like the competitor that we were going for, they didn't respond very fast, or we had a great rapport with the CEO of other companies and they made the deal favorable for us, or other things like that. The things that the rep doesn't get, the things that the rep doesn't see or think about. Trying to give that backward view on how do these things work. So I think this is going to be a good one. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, the big thing about this one, as you say, it's all in the buyer's mind, right? In other words, what's the buyer thinking? What triggers them? What makes them react emotionally? What gets them frustrated or angry or upset, resentful, whatever it might be? What do they expect you to do that you don't do? What do you do that annoys the hell out of them? Whatever it might be. All these things that go into an actual buying decision. And all the things, and you said it well right there, all the things typically that the rep isn't aware of. So I don't want to give anything away, but here's a teaser. All right. So the rep typically isn't aware of the behind the scenes relationship between the buyer and their own executives in their company, in the seller's company. All right. So the rep thinks they're in control, but what they don't always understand is the buyer has a back channel more often than you can ever imagine. So if you don't control that back channel, you're exposed. That's just one example. We're going to get right into it. Looking forward to that. What's the best way to learn more about that, Ollie?
I'm sure there's going to be a link somewhere in the chat or the description box, wherever you're viewing this. But next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, come look at Mr. Pro or my LinkedIn profile. It's going to be all over that. So hopefully we see you there.
All right. Next up, let's get into it. All right. Money. All right. Nectar. That's with a K, not a C. Nectar.ai. They have raised $6 million. $6 million to help sales teams collaborate better. And they call this a seed round, even though they've already got previous investments. And I always find that interesting. Can you have multiple seeds? Typically, you get a seed round and then you go for your actual real rounds. But, hey, more power to them. So $6 million, that combined with a previous round of $2.15 million brings them up to $8 million. They're out of Asia. And according to, the press release, they say this is one of the largest seed rounds ever for a SaaS-based company in Asia. Some interesting things about Nectar is that their workforce is entirely remote first. And the company says half of its team is women. So that's fantastic. They're certainly hitting all the hot buttons, and I'm glad and excited to see it. Now, Nectar is an interesting company, Ollie. I don't know how much you looked into them. By no means am I an expert on them, but I'm trying to understand their play a little bit, So what they say... I'm reading a little bit from an article from TechCrunch. Organizing information about prospective deals is a challenging task for B2B sales teams. And my immediate reaction is like, really? I don't find it challenging at all. Like, it's literally built into the tools we use. And we're using off-the-shelf tools that many other people are using. But anyway, since salespeople usually rely on multiple tools, email, Zoom, WhatsApp, etc., and I'm thinking to myself... weird, I don't see a CRM in this list. I don't see a marketing automation in this list. And I don't see the stuff that sales reps often use. But they said this is what the multiple tools they use to talk with buying committees, and becomes even more unwieldy when sales teams work remotely. So Nectar is a B2B sales productivity startup that wants to help sales teams by reducing the amount of time they spend on manual data entry and providing analytics that can increase their revenue. I mean, what this screams to me is this is perhaps a tool for incredibly small sales teams with no money, so maybe startups, who are desperate to find something that helps them sell better because they can't afford the usual tools. That's my reaction. Talk to me, Ollie. Have I lost it?
I was thinking the total opposite.
Okay, talk to me.
Well, now that you say that, I can see that making sense. And this is one of those possibly better for a technical founder, I'm thinking, now that you've said that. Not quite sure, wanting to to not fail the slow way. So we can't afford a gong or something to tell us, look, you did these things wrong or whatever. And really, those tools, they're only down to, if you can interpret the data very well, then you can learn a lot from it. But if you can't, then you can't. So this is kind of one of those. But I was actually thinking enterprise, where there's so much money floating around, and they can bolt this onto the ends and the beginnings of the sales process, and they can say, look how much better it would be if we had 4 people on the demo instead of 3 or 1. Imagine our ROI if we just changed something that we could probably have worked out anyway if we did that ourselves. The ROI is tremendous. We should retain our budget 100%, because look at the amazing information that we have found out here from this tool. That was the way I was seeing it. Maybe I'm a bit cynical about enterprise buyers and how their organization works, but that was my initial on that.
It feels to me it's trying to be the jack of all trades and do 10% of what all the individual best of class products do. And I think there's an audience for that. I think it's SMB, but that's it. So, folks, that's Nectar. Ollie and I have different points of view. You tell me, what do you think? Is Daryl just being an old cranky man, or are you in Camp Ollie? By the way, don't be in Camp Ollie. He's stupid. All right, that's money, money, money. That's your second insult of the day, by the way. You missed that, didn't you? That was your second insult.
I'm just keeping score. Don't worry.
All right, no problem. Let's move it along to corporate affairs. All right. Our good friend, our very, 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 very good friend, Jason Lemkin. We love him. We talk about him often. We follow his tweets. I love our show notes. And I think this one been written by my good friend Ollie in this particular one. It's official. He says, HubSpot are untouchable. All right. So just some stats here. They have increased their customer count by an incredible 40%, and they're at $1.2 billion in annual recurring revenue. As Jason says in his tweet, this is the age of the SMB in SaaS. And by the way, VanillaSoft targets SMB for a reason. There you go. They grew total customers to 121,048. I love that. And 48. No rounding here. Not 121,000 even. 120,048. As of June 30th, up 40% from June 30th, 2020. So year over year, that's not bad. So there you go. You are claiming they are untouchable. Truly, are they untouchable? I mean, yes, I know they're untouchable, but what makes you think they're untouchable?
I just thought it was staggering. I mean, years and years ago, I thought they were just huge. And it seems like they've doubled and trebled and quadrupled and quintupled upon that since then anyway. It's amazing. If I think about what it would take to double our business, which would just be a gargantuan effort, and we're a percentile of what they are as a company, and they're adding 40%, it's just mind goes. But they're an amazing company, and probably the past year or so has seen a lot more companies need to invest in that area of their business a lot more. So I imagine they're backpacking on that well, but they put themselves in that position. They're probably doing 20 blog posts a day. You can't go on Google and not find them. And if you're a small company looking to make your way into that space and you Google anything like that they would touch as a service, you will find your way onto their site somehow or another. You just will. And that's how it works.
Yes. They dominate in content and SEO and inbound. They truly do. They've got just like no one even comes close to them. You're right. That is, they drank their own lemonade. What I always find interesting about HubSpot is for years, HubSpot and Marketo were kind of like neck and neck, right? And Marketo was a little more upstream, a little more enterprise. HubSpot was a little more SMB, and they've gone more, medium enterprise as well too. And then HubSpot went and they acquired a little CRM company and grew it. And it was the world's worst CRM. It has grown leaps and bounds over the last several years. And many people are using it. I think a lot of their growth is from the CRM side, candidly. But you really don't hear about Marketo anymore. For those of you wondering, Marketo is still a phenomenal product. It's owned by Adobe now, in case you didn't know that. It got acquired by an equity firm who then later on flipped it with a small little profit to Adobe. And it's interesting because Adobe, they're not a quiet company. They have a lot of, loyal customer base. they could really make a lot of noise and continue to make a lot of noise in this space and expand the Marketo footprint. And yet the peers, they really, really don't. They've just kind of faded into oblivion, where HubSpot continues to just execute over and over again. They truly are untouchable. They've demonstrated they were not a one-hit wonder. They've had great growth. They've had great staying power. And you know, you have nothing but kudos to the CEO, Dharmesh, and the crew here. It's crazy. All right, so it's true. HubSpot are untouchable. It's official. Ollie has declared it. ZoomInfo. I get tired of talking about ZoomInfo nonstop. ZoomInfo. But guess what? They announced their Q2 earnings. Their revenues were up 57% year over year. Now, for context, they've been averaging about 50% for the last decade. So they're not underperforming, which is pretty crazy considering we've gone through COVID and everything else. And of course, COVID probably helped them a little bit, but they've also gone on a buying spree like you wouldn't believe. They're majorly financed. They're becoming what analysts refer to as an alpha platform, where they're just buying up all the pieces and they're going to be it. You go. Their Q2 revenue, if you're wondering, hit 174 million, and that's just a little bit above their 161 to 163 million guidance. So when you beat it by $10 million, life is good. They continue to grow in enterprise accounts. They always care about enterprise accounts because those are the big accounts. You always look at people. They always, in press releases, you can tell they'll tell you how many accounts they have who generate over $100,000 of ARR every single year. That's the big metric. And sure enough, this is no different. They now support over 1,100 customers. 1,100. It's probably, between you and I, Ollie, it's probably 1,148, but they chose to round. That's just my guess. With an ACV over 100,000, and that is up 150 from Q1. So that is well over 10% in one quarter. Not bad. And that's up 500 over the past year. That is good. That is almost, you do the math, a doubling, if my math says right. And then, as just to remind you, you heard it here, they did acquire Chorus, and they've called that a transformational acquisition. So with all that, Ollie, what do you think of ZoomInfo? Should we? You think they're going to be around for a bit? Are they just kind of a flash in the pan? Or, are they just a pretender? They want to be. What were your thoughts, man?
We should acquire them.
We should become the alpha.
No, we should acquire them. It'd be easy. Anyways,
we just take your salary and reallocate it.
I think we could probably quintuple it if we bought that company. All of the income that we'd have from all of these big customers. But the thing that I was thinking, sometimes when you acquire a company, they sort of count that revenue inside of the quarter. And although it was probably only 4 weeks ago, I think it was, when they acquired Chorus. So maybe the next year or the next quarter, it's, sometimes they say our end of year goal is to raise by 50% or whatever their concurrent is. How much does the Chorus side of that inflate or deflate or whatever? It probably won't deflate, will it? But if you acquire a company as the size of Chorus, surely the number is just going to be stupid. It's going to go from here to all the way up here, and it's going to look like a massive jump. And then they've got to sustain that for the next time out. But when you scale, when you keep the same pace, I think that's equally as impressive as doing the original scaling itself, because with more people, more challenges, that type of thing. And when you say 150 enterprise deals, we know they take a long time to close. Imagine how many are in their pipeline for one to come in a day for a quarter. That's ridiculous.
I would be curious how many of those $100,000 plus annual contract value deals came from Chorus. I don't suspect it's a lot, but I do suspect it's substantial enough to push that so hard and so fast. You see these great numbers, you think, oh my gosh, ZoomInfo must be growing, but you need to understand, they are acquiring companies, and so you get the mass of the user base and mass of all those wonderful stats and existing contracts. But that's why you do it. It's the fastest way to grow and establish value. Next up, this one's interesting. This one, it makes me smile, and there's lots of reasons why that I won't all share. Xant, Xant, Xant. And for those of you who don't know Zant, we've talked about them many times before. They're a sales engagement vendor. Probably about a year and a half ago, they changed their name from InsideSales.com to Zant when they had a new CEO and a new CMO come on. The CEO and the CMO worked together multiple times. They had done that to kind of resurrect the company because they never really seemed, even though they had massive success and had massive funding and investment, they never really seemed to really be able to settle on a message and own a niche and run with it. They were all in our artificial intelligence for the longest time, but the messaging was always changing. We've talked about them before. We shared in the last month or two, they had massive amount of layoffs. What I heard reported was 70% of their sales force have been let go. There was a lot of reduction in staff there. A lot of the key managements, people like Gabe Larson, who was their head of marketing and business development, had left probably a year and a half ago to go to customer. That was a huge loss, in my opinion. Guess what, Ollie? This is where you say what, Daryl?
What happened?
They were acquired. They were acquired. I'm not making this up, by Aura Software. Aurea Software, Aurea. And they, Ollie, hey, you got to love this messaging because I see this messaging all the time. For example, John Barrows has a lot of training content, and they call themselves the Netflix of sales training, all right, where they have a lot of, and that's what their whole positioning is. Well, apparently, Aurea, you may not know this, Ollie. I've never heard of them. I'm slow. They are the Netflix of business software. Okay. Terms were not disclosed. They announced it has acquired Zant. So Zant has been acquired by Aurea. Aurea's industry, I'm sorry, we go right here. Aurea's future of commerce portfolio, which includes more than a dozen software solutions like Infer and First Rain. Ali, have you heard of Infer or First Rain?
No, I have not.
I have never heard of them. Enables, but they make the boilerplate in the press release, so that must be their marquee products. Enables B2B salespeople and marketers to target and engage prospects across the entire sales and marketing funnel more intelligently. And then Zant's technology will help bridge the all-important gap between marketing and sales engagement, the initial prospect contact. So let me go here. Aurea helps global businesses accelerate digital transformation through unlimited access to the world's first business software library, which includes solutions that enable the future of commerce, work, and IT. I mean, this just sounds like it's an equity play. That's all.
This is a mouthful. I'm already a little bit drowsy.
I know. I'm the same way. I want to go to Aurea and say, maybe you should acquire somebody who knows how to do marketing. But hey, that's just my opinion. But most interesting that I find funny, and actually I think it's a good move, is they're going to rebrand Zant. Ollie, what do you think they're going to rebrand Zant as? They're going to change the name of the company.
One guess alone.
What?
Weren't they previously InsideSales.com? Because that
you
sounds
got
like,
it.
That sounds like a great media
InsideSales.com.
company, doesn't it? And there you go.
Used to be InsideSales.com, then became Zant. Now going back to InsideSales.com. I really want to know what's happening to the CEO and the CMO. The CEO is interesting. The CEO's wife at Zant, I never heard what happened to it, but she was being considered for a real wives of Salt Lake City, you know, kind of the real life, so Beverly Hills, where it's the rich and the famous and the wives, and they're all very entitled and very affluent and very catty. So interesting drama going on there. I don't know what's going on with those executives. Doesn't say anywhere, but there you go. They've been acquired. Let's see what happens with them. Finally, more drama and intrigue in the sales engagement space. Now, I may be making this a little more exciting than what it is. Outreach has a new chief marketing officer. Now, Ollie, I'm confused because I thought they already had a recent new chief marketing officer after they acquired Sales Hacker, and Matt Altschuler was their VP of marketing. And then they acquired a chief marketing officer. And I'm like, that's weird. They got a VP of marketing in Max, who's got a reputation and influence and recognition in this space and street cred. And then they got a chief marketing officer from Microsoft. I think her name was Margaret Arakawa. And she had almost 20 years at Microsoft. And they hired her as a chief marketing officer, I assume, above her. And my thought reaction was, oh, wow, Outreach is lining up to go IPO, and they're pulling in all these heavy names from all these people with these great pedigrees. So the street will react favorably to them because, hey, there's a Microsoft leader, and all the Microsoft contacts and all, the investors who follow Microsoft would follow Outreach, and this is, they were doing this in multiple positions. And then all of a sudden I see a press release that they've hired a new chief marketing officer. And I'm like, but wasn't it Margaret just there? And I actually went and did a Google because I was so confused. And it turned out, I missed this, that she left. She left back late last year. And in an email to GeekWire, she confirmed she's moving on to something new, but declined to share more details. So the new CMO is Melton Littlepage. Served as Senior Vice President of Marketing at New Relic and as CMO at Schoology. Sorry. I don't know what to say to this, but this to me, being the marketing exec myself of some time, it feels like they didn't get along. Something was going on. They didn't get along, and they moved quickly. I'm not familiar with Melton Littlepage. Melton may be an excellent CMO. Normally, I know the names of all of these notable leaders because, this is what you do, right? You're in the space. They're colleagues. I've never heard of them. So Melton, great gig. Outreach, you landed at a unicorn. Well done, my friend. Looking forward to see what you can do with them. But what's your take on this? I know you got an interesting idea here about tenure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a couple of things for me. So we always hear about the VP of sales having somewhere around 18 months as their tenure on average before it's time to go somewhere else or whatever else happens. Maybe this is the new thing for a CMO and marketing leaders, especially when you go up the series D, E, F, and so on ladder. So maybe that's part of it. And what I also find a little bit strange is when I get an email and it says, we work with people like Oracle, Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. I can't resonate with it in any way, right? And maybe if I worked at Outreach, I'd be a bit closer to that level. But I still perceive that as a massive jump. So let's say I bring in the Microsoft whatever, or even today, if we brought in the Microsoft any title, worlds apart in what the work would be like, in how their team would operate, in the tactics, totally different. And with no disrespect to anybody that has ever been at any of those companies, it is such a difference. You can't just rip off what you're doing, put it here, and expect it to work even the same at all. Period. So having that CMO from Microsoft sounds very good, and maybe the connections for an IPO and that type of thing was part of it. But I don't know. I always find like that's 2 or 3 stepping stones ahead. If they looked at 1 or 1.5 stepping stones ahead, maybe that bigger company that. Maybe what they should have done, go for Zoom Info as CMO, right? Something like that. A company where they are IPO, but they're not worlds away. That then can bring them forward a bit. And gradually they'll do it. Gradually is the word that no SaaS company wants to say. But that was just me. I mean...
No, actually, I think you're very wise. I 100% agree with you. That's why I thought they were preparing for an IPO by bringing in somebody from Microsoft. Because like you... I'm of the opinion, if I bring in somebody, they're from Microsoft, or they're from Oracle, or they're from IBM, or they're from Apple. But my reaction is they're going to be the worst executive ever. And it's nothing to do with them. Because what they know, their experience, their tenure is premised on the fact that they're starting all of their campaigns, all of their objectives are starting with they've already got, a world-class brand, name recognition, traction with all the right people, investment community, industry analysts, etc. Like they don't have to work to create attention or awareness. They just need, and they don't need to work on even doing demand generation because the inbound volume of inquiries is so high that they don't have to worry about that. Whereas someone coming into a VanillaSoft, okay, we're not there, and we don't have the same size teams, and we don't have the same size bank account. And so all the things that you were used to, which is why your campaigns worked, absolutely will not work here. It's a much different selling environment, much different marketing environment. How guerrilla can you be? It's a different set of skills. And that's why, to me, the only logical reason was they were getting ready for the street. That's what that was. It was a play for the street. So maybe Melton is exactly that. They're coming from a New Relic and Schoology. So maybe they're exactly what you just described. So maybe they've learned their lesson. All right. Anyway, stay tuned for that. The days of our lives in the world of sales engagement. It's time for water cooler talk. And we have one tweet here. I'm going to throw it over to my good friend Ollie to talk about. But I will say this. This tweet also comes from Jason Lemkin. Ollie, just noticing, and by the way, this will be insult number 3, that Mr. Lemkin has given us at least 2 pieces of content today that we felt were show worthy, which is probably at least double the contribution and value that you've added to the show. I just want to put that out there. My observation. What's Mr. Lemkin talking about now that is relevant to water cooler talk?
You're allowed to be wrong. It's a free world. Anyways, moving on to the important stuff rather than Mr. Prail's digs. So he says at 10 million in ARR, there's only a few things that you need to focus on. So he says spend 20 to 40% of your time recruiting, meet with top prospects and customers, backfill your team's weaknesses, and work on strategy and goals. That's if you're one of the C-level, probably the CEO he's directly talking about. He doesn't say that, but most of the time he's talking about that type of thing anyway. So I'm thinking, he says this a lot, spend a huge amount of time recruiting. Okay, for what and for who? Can we just recruit forever? I don't know. But I get his point. We can always hire that next great VP, that next great director or something. We can always do more of that. And maybe we can have some junior people who are going to come up through the ranks. But I don't know. I find it's kind of cliche a little bit. And I think he's a super smart guy. And I follow all of his tweets. They're very, very good stuff all the time. He never lets you down. But I find... What are you thinking when you read this? To spend 20 to 40% of your time recruiting. I mean, so what's that, a day and a half a week?
I was just on the Peak Community Quarterly State of Marketing panel we had this week. By the way, just because you're slow, we do it every quarter. There we go. And one of the things that came up, we're talking about existing trends and forward-looking trends, was just that the recruitment, the talent pool is getting harder and harder and harder. I think in the world of sales right now, for example, there's 1.7 positions for every 1 rep that's out there. And because of that, there's a talent war. Because of that, compensation plans have gone through the roof. So having 20 to 40% of your time recruiting simply means you have a talent pool you can pull on and say, okay, now we have openings, come in and work for us. It also means you should be candidly always, turning over the bottom 10% of your organization and trying to improve that. That's pretty much, best in practice school of business, thoughts right there. So most people don't do this. We don't do this regularly. And when we don't, we kick ourselves in the ass. So I agree with that. The issue I have with this is I can be recruiting nonstop, but if I reach out to you and I say, we really like you, and we want to keep you in line and keep you aware of what's coming on, we want to get you on board here in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, and you say, okay, that doesn't stop you from taking phone calls from other recruiters, and 4 months later, you've jumped ship. So this is good, but you got to be able to fill these roles quick. Otherwise, you're going to lose them, especially right now. When he says backfill your team's weaknesses, to me, that's more so I can backfill them with other people, or I can backfill them with outside contractors, or I can backfill them with knowledge and training. And I know we've put it in an exceptional investment here in knowledge and training, trying to supplement our own weaknesses internally where we could be better. So I do agree with that. Too many organizations spend very little to almost nothing on professional development, and that is absolutely stupid. All you're doing is just selling yourself short. So I do agree with that. Work on strategy and goals. Too many companies say they do, and they'll sit down once a year and they'll do it. They actually don't deliver. The companies you see growing are the ones who are constantly innovating and finding the resources to actually either partner or do the development necessary. What I find is too many organizations, candidly, are influenced heavily by the yelling, screaming customers who demand more, even though, ironically, the stuff they're demanding from you was never on the feature list when they bought your product. So because they listen to them and they're like, oh, can't lose these people. It's a big customer. It's a big customer, big customer. They actually stop doing the development necessary to support full circle, strategy and goals. So I agree with him on that one entirely. Meeting with your customers and prospects, we don't do this enough. Like nobody in this industry does this enough. So customer advisory councils are a fantastic way of doing it. I'm seeing the emergence of a lot of chief customer officer roles now, and I'm seeing that have a dramatic effect. So when I see companies have that role, my reaction is twofold. One is, okay, they've got enough cash in the bank they can actually afford this role. That's impressive. So they're obviously healthy, because that's not a core role to the management team. And two, I kudos and applause, because that says you understand that your customers are, you want to manage churn. So if you want to manage churn, make sure your customers are happy. So that's also how you innovate, because often it's your customers who are coming up with new ways to use your own tools. So there we go. All right, Ollie, it's time for your rant, my friend. What's on your mind these days?
All right, so it's a story this time out. It's becoming more of a story than a rant these days, but anyways, we'll go with it. So there is a conference that we sponsor. You know it very well. We've been sponsoring it for years and years now, okay? I've been emailed, I think it's between 5 and 7 times in the past couple of weeks by this company, the event sponsor, the event themselves, asking if we would like to sponsor it. So clearly, there's just something gone wrong with their mailing there. They've not customer referenced the list, or they've just missed out the domain or something. They've not quite got the data on point there. And I personally have been to the event, not with us in a previous life. I've been to the event and I've met this specific person. I remember their name. I remember seeing them. And we showed up to the event, and the stand next to the one I was at had some Spotify music playing very, very, very loud on some speakers, which I believe is illegal, because you can't broadcast that in a public space. You have to own the licensing, which in Spotify you don't. So they hadn't dealt with that, and it was unbelievably annoying. It was so loud, and it had the same 10 songs on repeat for the 2 days that we were there, 8 hours a day. And they hadn't dealt with that. They walked straight around when they were meant to be helping us set up our booth and help us kit it out. And he said, so you guys enjoying the show? Will you be here next year? Would you like to book in your sponsorship now? I'm like, I don't think we do. What do you want from me? And, and now I'm being emailed from the same person again, and we're already sponsoring it. How does this even happen? I'm so confused. The first thing I did, I promise, when I joined this company, I wanted to reach out to some of our customers. I made sure that when I was reaching out to people who were not our customers, I had a do not send to this list thing on all of my tools, every single one, every campaign. That was the first thing I cared about, because I didn't want to look at my customer and say, sorry, I know you're sponsoring. Ignore my email, please, or all 6 of them. So there you go. That's my head frazzle of the week.
I've received numerous emails as well from them, and I love that, because I'm like, oh, you mean like you want me to sponsor? And then I send them a screen capture of their website, and I annotate my logo, and I put a big arrow there, and I circle it, and I say, you mean like I already am? And they're always, oh, sorry. And it's a classic case of some of these events are really becoming a boiler shop, where they're just there's no marketing. It's 100% sales. We have these lists just being thrown at them, because the events, it's a bitch of an industry to be in, trying to get people to do it, especially with the COVID thing. They're just calling everybody in the world. They've got some pretty aggressive numbers, and they're trying to play catch up because they haven't been able to have the show for 1 or 2 years. So, marketers, step in. I blame you, marketers, for sales folks not actually managing this properly. Sales folks are not good at this. The one thing I've said multiple times this week, ironically, on multiple panels that I've been on, is that sales reps are not measured. It's not in their job description. It's not in their KPIs or their OKRs. They're not measured typically for customer experience. And because of that, the customer experience suffers and the customer gets frustrated and annoyed. You were a customer. You're still a customer, and yet they're hassling you and stalking you, all right? And the sales rep doesn't care because they're not measured and comped on that. And if they were, a lot of this would change. So if you're in sales, you're selling for an event, don't be like this company. And by the way, there's a lot of you out there. I love you. I love events, but we buyers, we sponsors, we get really annoyed, okay? So just please stop it already. I'm with you on that one. Okay, with that, Ollie, we're out of time. Thank you so much for filling in for Catherine. I want you to know you did not suck today. Yay, Ollie. With that, my friends, we're going to do it again next week. I'm Darrow. That's Ollie. Catherine blew us off. Oh, you like Ollie better, right? You know all that. With that said, you take care. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.